Thutmose III was the sixth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. During the first 22 years of Thutmose's reign, he was co-regent with his stepmother and aunt, Hatshepsut, who was named the pharaoh. While he was shown first on surviving monuments, both were assigned the usual royal names and insignia, and neither is given any obvious seniority over the other. He served as the head of her armies after her death and his later rise to pharaoh of the kingdom. He created the largest empire Egypt had ever seen. No fewer than 17 campaigns were conducted, and he conquered from near in North Syria to the fourth cataract of the Nile in Nubia. Officially, Thutmose III ruled Egypt for almost 54 years, and his reign is usually dated from April 24, 1479 BC to March 11, 1425 BC. However, this includes the 22 years he was co-regent to Hatshepsut. During the final 2 years of his reign, he appointed his son and successor, Amenhotep II, as his junior co-regent. His firstborn son and heir to the throne, Amenemhat, predeceased Thutmose III. When Thutmose III died, he was buried in the Valley of the Kings, as were the rest of the kings from this period in Egypt. Family. Thutmose III was the son of Thutmose II by a secondary wife, Iset. His father's great royal wife was Queen Hatshepsut. Her daughter Neferua was Thutmose's half-sister. When Thutmose II died, Thutmose III was too young to rule, so Hatshepsut became his regent, soon his co-regent, and shortly thereafter, she declared herself to be the pharaoh while never denying kinship to young Thutmose III. Thutmose III had little power over the empire, while Hatshepsut exercised the formal titulary of kingship. Her rule was quite prosperous and marked by great advancements. When he reached a suitable age and demonstrated the capability, she appointed him to head her armies. Thutmose III had several wives. Saisha. She may have been the mother of his firstborn son, Amenemhat. An alternative theory is that the boy was the son of Neferua. Amenemhat predeceased his father, Merita Hatshepsut. Thutmose's successor, the crown prince and future king Amenhotep II, was the son of Merita Hatshepsut. Additional children include Menkaperah and daughters named Nebuchadnezzar, Merilyetemun, and Iset. Merita Hatshepsut was the daughter of the divine adoratrice Hai, Nebtu. She is depicted on a pillar in Thutmose III's tomb. Mena, Merta, Menhet 3 foreign wives. Neferua. Thutmose III may have married his half-sister, but there is no conclusive evidence for this marriage. It has been suggested that Neferua may have been the mother of Amenemhat instead of Saisha. Dates and length of reign. Thutmose III reigned from 1479 BC to 1425 BC according to the low chronology of ancient Egypt. This has been the conventional Egyptian chronology in academic circles since the 1960s, though in some circles the older dates 1504 BC to 1450 BC are preferred from the high chronology of Egypt. These dates, just as all the dates of the 18th dynasty, are open to dispute because of uncertainty about the circumstances surrounding the recording of a heliacal rise of Sothis in the reign of Amenhotep I. A papyrus from Amenhotep I's reign records this astronomical observation, which theoretically could be used to perfectly correlate the Egyptian chronology with the modern calendar. However, to do this, the latitude where the observation was taken must also be known. This document has no note of the place of observation, but it can safely be assumed that it was taken in either a delta city such as Memphis or Heliopolis, or in Thebes. These two latitudes give dates 20 years apart, the high and low chronologies, respectively. The length of Thutmose III's reign is known to the day thanks to information found in the tomb of the military commander Amenemhet-Mehu. Amenemhet-Mehu records Thutmose III's death to his master's 54th regnal year, on the 30th day of the third month of Peret. The day of Thutmose III's accession is known to be Ishemu Day 4, and astronomical observations can be used to establish the exact dates of the beginning and end of the king's reign from April 24, 1479 BC to March 11, 1425 BC respectively. Thutmose's military campaigns. Widely considered a military genius by historians, Thutmose III made 16 raids in 20 years. He was an active expansionist ruler, sometimes called Egypt's greatest conqueror or the Napoleon of Egypt. He is recorded to have captured 350 cities during his rule and conquered much of the Near East from the Euphrates to Nubia during 17 known military campaigns. He was the first pharaoh after Thutmose I to cross the Euphrates, doing so during his campaign against Mitanni. His campaign records were transcribed onto the walls of the Temple of Amun at Karnak, and are now transcribed into Urkunda Navi. He is consistently regarded as one of the greatest of Egypt's warrior pharaohs, who transformed Egypt into an international superpower by creating an empire that stretched from southern Syria through to Canaan and Nubia. In most of his campaigns his enemies were defeated town by town, until being beaten into submission. The preferred tactic was to subdue a much weaker city or state one at a time, resulting in surrender of each fraction until complete domination was achieved. Much is known about Thutmosis, the warrior, not only because of his military achievements, but also because of his royal scribe and army commander, Thanyani, who wrote about his conquest and reign. The prime reason why Thutmosis was able to conquer such a large number of lands is because of the revolution and improvement in army weapons. When the Hyksos invaded and took over Egypt with more advanced weapons such as horse-drawn chariots, the people of Egypt learned to use these weapons. He encountered only little resistance from neighboring kingdoms, allowing him to expand his realm of influence easily. His army also had carried boats on dry land. These campaigns are inscribed on the inner wall of the great chamber housing the Holy of Holies at the Karnak Temple of Amun. These inscriptions give the most detailed and accurate account of any Egyptian king. First campaign. When Hatshepsut died on the 10th day of the 6th month of Thutmose III's 21st year, according to information from a single stela from Armant, the king of Kadesh advanced his army to Megiddo. Thutmose III mustered his own army and departed Egypt, passing through the border fortress of Tiaru on the 25th day of the 8th month. Thutmose marched his troops through the coastal plain as far as Jamnia, then inland to Yim, a small city near Megiddo, which he reached in the middle of the 9th month of the same year. The ensuing Battle of Megiddo probably was the largest battle in any of Thutmose's 17 campaigns. A ridge of mountains jutting inland from Mount Carmel stood between Thutmose and Megiddo, and he had 3 potential routes to take. The northern route and the southern route, both of which went around the mountain, were judged by his council of war to be the safest, but Thutmose, in an act of great bravery, accused the council of cowardice and took a dangerous route through the Aruna mountain pass, which he alleged was only wide enough for the army to pass horse after horse and man after man. Despite the laudatory nature of Thutmose's annals, such a pass does indeed exist, and taking it was a brilliant strategic move, since when his army emerged from the pass they were situated on the plain of Astralan, directly between the rear of the Canaanite forces and Megiddo itself. For some reason, the Canaanite forces did not attack him as his army emerged, and his army routed them decisively. The size of the two forces is difficult to determine, but if, as Redford suggests, the amount of time it took to move the army through the pass may be used to determine the size of the Egyptian force, and if the number of sheep and goats captured may be used to determine the size of the Canaanite force, then both armies were around 10,000 men. However, most scholars do believe that the Egyptian army was more numerous. According to Thutmose III's Hall of Annals in the Temple of Amun at Karnak, the battle occurred on year 23, Ishamu, day 21, the exact day of the Feast of the New Moon, a lunar date. This date corresponds to May 9, 1457 BC based on Thutmose III's accession in 1479 BC. After victory in battle, however, his troops stopped to plunder the enemy and the enemy was able to escape into Megiddo. Thutmose was forced to besiege the city instead, but he finally succeeded in conquering it after a siege of 7 or 8 months. This campaign drastically changed the political situation in the ancient Near East. By taking Megiddo, Thutmose gained control of all of northern Canaan, and the Syrian princes were obligated to send tribute and their own sons as hostages to Egypt. Beyond the Euphrates, the Assyrian, Babylonian, and Hittite kings all gave Thutmose gifts, which he alleged to be tribute when he recorded it on the walls of Karnak. The only noticeable absence is Mitanni, which would bear the brunt of the following Egyptian campaigns into Asia. Tours of Canaan and Syria. Thutmose's second, third, and fourth campaigns appear to have been nothing more than tours of Syria and Canaan to collect tribute. Traditionally, the material directly after the text of the first campaign has been considered to be the second campaign. This text records tribute from the area which the Egyptians called retenue, and it was also at this time that Assyria paid a second tribute to Thutmose III. However, it is probable that these texts come from Thutmose's 40th year or later, and thus have nothing to do with the second campaign at all. If so, then so far, no records of this campaign have been found at all. Thutmose's third campaign was not considered significant enough to appear in his otherwise extensive annals at Karnak. However, a survey was made of the animals and plants he found in Canaan, which was illustrated on the walls of a special room at Karnak. This survey is dated to Thutmose's 25th year. No record remains of Thutmose's fourth campaign whatsoever, but at some point in time a fort was built in Lower Lebanon and timber was cut for construction of a processional bark, and this probably fits best during this time frame. Conquest of Syria. The 5th, 6th, and 7th campaigns of Thutmose III were directed against the Phoenician cities in Syria and against Kadesh on the Orontes. In Thutmose's 29th year, he began his 5th campaign where he first took an unknown city which had been garrisoned by Tunip. He then moved inland and took the city and territory around Ardata. The town was pillaged and the wheat fields burnt. Unlike previous plundering raids, however, Thutmose III subsequently garrisoned the area known as Jahi, which is probably a reference to southern Syria. This subsequently permitted him to ship supplies and troops between Syria and Egypt. Although there is no direct evidence for it, it is for this reason that some have supposed that Thutmose's 6th campaign, in his 30th year, commenced with a naval transportation of troops directly into Byblos, bypassing Canaan entirely. After the troops arrived in Syria by whatever means, they proceeded into the Jordan River Valley and moved north from there, pillaging Kadesh's lands. Turning west again, Thutmose took Samarra and quelled a rebellion in Ardata, which apparently had rebelled once again. To stop such rebellions, Thutmose began taking hostages from the cities in Syria. The cities in Syria were not guided by the popular sentiment of the people so much as they were by the small number of nobles who were aligned to Mitanni, a king, and a small number of foreign Marianu. Thutmose III found that by taking family members of these key people to Egypt as hostages, he could drastically increase their loyalty to him. However, Syria did rebel yet again in Thutmose's 31st year, and he returned to Syria for his 7th campaign, took the port city of Al-Azhar and the smaller Phoenician ports, and took even more measures to prevent further rebellions. All the excess grain which was produced in Syria was stored in the harbors he had recently conquered, and was used for the support of the military and civilian Egyptian presence ruling Syria. This furthermore left the cities in Syria desperately impoverished, and with their economies in ruins, they had no means of funding a rebellion. Attack on Mitanni. After Thutmose III had taken control of the Syrian cities, the obvious target for his 8th campaign was the state of Mitanni, a Hurran country with an Indo-Aryan ruling class. However, to reach Mitanni, he had to cross the Euphrates River. Therefore, Thutmose III enacted the following strategy. He sailed directly to Byblos and then made boats which he took with him overland on what appeared to otherwise be just another tour of Syria, and he proceeded with the usual raiding and pillaging as he moved north through the lands he had already taken. However, here he continued north through the territory belonging to the still unconquered cities of Aleppo and Carchemish, and then quickly crossed the Euphrates in his boats, taking the Mitannian king entirely by surprise. It appears that Mitanni was not expecting an invasion, so they had no army of any kind ready to defend against Thutmose, although their ships on the Euphrates did try to defend against the Egyptian crossing. Thutmose III then went freely from city to city and pillaged them while the nobles hid in caves. During this period of no opposition, Thutmose put up a second stela commemorating his crossing of the Euphrates, next to the one his grandfather Thutmose I had put up several decades earlier. Eventually a militia was raised to fight the invaders, but it fared very poorly. Thutmose III then returned to Syria by way of Niy, where he records that he engaged in an elephant hunt. He then collected tribute from foreign powers and returned to Egypt in victory. Tours of Syria. Thutmose III returned to Syria for his 9th campaign in his 34th year, but this appears to have been just a raid of the area called Nuqashsha, a region populated by semi-nomadic people. The plunder recorded is minimal, so it was probably just a minor raid. Records from his 10th campaign indicate much more fighting, however. By Thutmose's 35th year, the king of Mitanni had raised a large army and engaged the Egyptians around Aleppo. As usual for any Egyptian king, Thutmose boasted a total crushing victory, but this statement is suspect. Specifically, it is doubted that Thutmose accomplished any great victory here due to the very small amount of plunder taken. Specifically, Thutmose's annals at Karnak indicate he only took a total of 10 prisoners of war. He may simply have fought the Mitannians to a stalemate, yet he did receive tribute from the Hittites after that campaign, which seems to indicate the outcome of the battle was in Thutmose's favor. The details about his next 2 campaigns are unknown. His 11th is presumed to have happened in his 36th regnal year, and his 12th is presumed to have happened in his 37th. Since his 13th is mentioned at Karnak as happening in his 38th regnal year, part of the tribute list for his 12th campaign remains immediately before his 13th begins, and the contents recorded might indicate that it took place on the steppe around Nuqashsh, but this remains mere speculation. In his 13th campaign, Thutmose returned to Nuqashsh for a very minor campaign. The next year, his 39th year, he mounted his 14th campaign against the Shasu. The location of this campaign is impossible to determine definitely, since the Shasu were nomads who could have lived anywhere from Lebanon to the Transjordan, to Edom. After this point, the numbers given by Thutmose's scribes to his campaigns all fall in lacunae, so campaigns can only be counted by date. In his 40th year, tribute was collected from foreign powers, but it is unknown if this was considered a campaign. Only the tribute list remains from Thutmose's next campaign in the annals, and nothing may be deduced about it, except that it probably was another raid to the frontiers around Niy. His final Asian campaign is better documented, however. Sometime before Thutmose's 42nd year, Mitanni apparently began spreading revolt among all the major cities in Syria. Thutmose moved his troops by land up the coastal road and put down rebellions in the Arka plain and moved on Tunip. After taking Tunip, his attention turned to Kadesh again. He engaged and destroyed 3 surrounding Mitannian garrisons and returned to Egypt in victory. However, his victory in this final campaign was neither complete nor permanent, since he did not take Kadesh. Tunip could not have remained aligned to him for very long, certainly not beyond his own death. Nubian campaign. Thutmose took one last campaign in his 50th regnal year, very late in his life. He attacked Nubia, but only went so far as the 4th cataract of the Nile. Although no king of Egypt had ever penetrated so far as he did with an army, previous kings' campaigns had spread Egyptian culture that far already, and the earliest Egyptian document found at Gebel Barkal, in fact, comes from 3 years before Thutmose's campaign.